Have you noticed that the internet feels different lately? I do not mean the design changes or the new apps. I mean the texture of the place. It feels quieter, yet somehow louder. It feels like walking through a bustling city where everyone is wearing a mask. And if you look closely enough, you realize that nobody is actually home. This is not just nostalgia for a simpler time. It is a creeping suspicion shared by millions of users. It is a conspiracy theory known as the dead internet theory, and it suggests something terrifying, that the humans have already left the building, and you are the last real person left in the room. To understand this paranoia, you have to look at the comment sections of the major platforms, which have transformed into something deeply unsettling. You scroll through a viral post and see thousands of replies, but the syntax feels slightly off, like a song played just a fraction of a beat too slow. The responses are generic, repetitive, and strangely enthusiastic, creating a chorus of "this is everything" and "I see a not breathe" that lacks any specific connection to the content. It is the textual equivalent of the uncanny valley, where the behavior is close enough to human to be recognizable, but artificial enough to trigger a primal revulsion. You are not reading the organic reactions of a crowd. You are reading a database of pre-programmed responses designed to mimic engagement. It feels less like a conversation and more like a simulation of a conversation, a hollow performance put on to convince you that the party is still happening. This brings us to the most disturbing metaphor for our current online existence. You are living in a digital version of The Truman Show. In the film, the protagonist lives in a constructed reality where everyone he meets, his neighbors, his friends, his wife, are actors following a script placed there to keep him placated and watching. In your case, the actors are sophisticated bots and algorithmic scripts, and the director is the engagement model that curates your feed. When you post a photo and receive a sudden influx of likes, it is not necessarily because you created something of value. It is because the system decided to release a dopamine hit to keep you logged in. The accounts interacting with you are often not people with complex inner lives, but digital props moving across the stage to create the illusion of a thriving society. You're the product, the audience, and the victim all at once, trapped in a feedback loop where you perform for an empty theater that is programmed to applaud. The contrast between this sterile environment and the internet of 15 years ago is stark and depressing. In the days of the Wild West Web, the internet was ugly, chaotic, and often hostile, but it was undeniably human. Forums were filled with distinct, idiosyncratic voices. Flame wars were driven by genuine emotion, and content was created by people simply because they wanted to share something weird. There is a roughness to the texture of the web, a friction that proved you were rubbing shoulders with other living, breathing organisms. Today, that friction has been sanded down into a smooth, corporate veneer where every interaction is safe, predictable, and monetizable. The erratic human element has been purged in favor of efficiency, replaced by a sanitized theme park where the animatronics are programmed to never say anything controversial. The statistics backing this theory are grim, suggesting that nearly half of all internet traffic is now non-human. We're talking about billions of clicks, views, and comments generated by crawlers, scrapers, and click farms interacting with one another in an endless, automated loop. This means that a significant portion of the culture you consume is being driven by machines talking to machines, with humans merely acting as bystanders caught in the crossfire. The trends that rise to the top of your feed are not necessarily what people are interested in. They are often just the result of bot networks inflating engagement numbers to game the system. You're walking through a ghost town where the lights are on and the music is playing, but if you shout into the void, the only thing that answers back is an echo generated by a server farm. To understand how this ghost town was built, we have to look at the supply chain of information. For 30 years, the fundamental law of the internet was simple. Humans created content, and other humans consumed it. But somewhere in the last few years, that cycle was quietly broken and replaced by something far more efficient and far more grotesque. We have entered the era of the Ouroboros, the mythical snake that eats its own tail forever. Today, a massive portion of the text, images, and videos you scroll past were generated by an artificial intelligence, optimized by an algorithm, and published solely to be indexed by a search engine bot. This shift has resulted in a torrential flood of what sociologists are calling sludge, a kind of digital filler that mimics the shape of information without containing any actual substance. You see it in the endless stream of top 10 articles that restate the obvious in robotic, repetitive prose, designed only to capture search traffic for specific keywords. You hear it in the YouTube tutorials narrated by soulless text-to-speech voices, explaining how to fix a problem the creator has never actually encountered. Even the visual language of the web is being corrupted, as Facebook feeds fill up with bizarre, surreal images of shrimp Jesus hybrids or impossible architecture, churned out by image generators to farm likes from unsuspecting elderly users. This content is not created to inform, entertain, or express a human perspective. It is manufactured to occupy space and serve advertisements, functioning like a billboard that was printed by a machine and placed in a forest where no one walks. The true horror of this system is that humans are no longer the primary audience for the Internet's output. We are merely accidental tourists wading through a conversation between machines. The article written by an AI is often read primarily by a Google crawler, which indexes it so that another bot can scrape it for data, while an automated ad bidding system places a banner on the page that is viewed by a click farm bot. The entire economic transaction occurs without a single conscious thought taking place, a closed loop of capital flow that requires no biological participation whatsoever. We have built a vast, automated infrastructure that generates engagement for its own sake, creating a hollow economy where metrics go up but reality stays flat. The Internet has ceased to be a tool for human connection and has become a high-speed trading floor for synthetic attention. This incestuous cycle of AI training on AI data leads to a terrifying, inevitable conclusion: the progressive stupefaction of our digital intelligence. When a large language model scrapes the web today, it is ingesting billions of words written by its predecessors, absorbing the errors, hallucinations, and bland stylistic quirks of earlier machines. This creates a feedback loop of degradation, similar to making a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. Eventually, the sharp edges of reality blur, and the image dissolves into black static. The nuance, slang, and unpredictable creativity of human speech are smoothed out into a statistically average gray goo, making the Internet feel increasingly repetitive and dreamlike. We are poisoning the well of our own collective knowledge, filling the Library of Alexandria with books written by illiterate ghosts. The result is a digital ecosystem that is rapidly suffering from inbreeding. As the machines feed on their own output, the quality of information degrades into a slurry of nonsense, a phenomenon computer scientists call model collapse. The Internet is no longer a library of human knowledge. It is a landfill of automated noise. But this infinite loop of garbage is not an accident, and it is not a mistake. It is a feature, because in the eyes of the systems that run our economy, the distinction between a human and a bot is irrelevant as long as the money keeps moving. If you're wondering why anyone would waste the energy to build a digital wasteland, the answer is remarkably simple. It is a heist. This ocean of algorithmic garbage is not the result of incompetence. It is the result of a highly profitable crime known as ad fraud. The entire economy of the modern web is built on the premise that when an advertisement is displayed on a screen, a human being is looking at it. But human attention is a finite resource. There are only so many hours in the day and only so many people on the planet. So, when the demand for advertising slots outstripped the supply of human eyes, the market quietly invented a solution. It manufactured fake people. To sustain the illusion of infinite growth, the tech industry birthed a shadow population of synthetic users, creating a sprawling infrastructure of deception that operates on an industrial scale. In dimly lit warehouses across the globe, there are racks containing thousands of smartphones wired together, their screens flickering in unison as they scroll through social media feeds and watch videos without a single human eyewitnessing the content. Even more common are the server farms running headless browsers, sophisticated programs that simulate the behavior of a web user, moving a mouse, pausing to read text, and clicking links, entirely in the background code. These bots are programmed to mimic our digital fingerprints, generating a chaotic trail of cookies and history data to trick fraud detection algorithms into classifying them as potential customers. They are the perfect consumers. They never sleep, they never get bored, and they can watch 10,000 advertisements in the time it takes you to drink your coffee. This dynamic has created a bizarre economic inversion where the human user is no longer the primary customer of the internet, but merely a host organism for the parasitic bot network. Major corporations pour billions of dollars into digital marketing budgets, believing they are paying for brand awareness, when in reality, they're simply funding a closed loop of machines talking to machines. The advertiser pays the platform to display a banner. The platform serves the banner to a bot, and the bot clicks the banner to validate the transaction, moving money from one corporate bank account to another while no actual value is created. It is a hollow economy, a vast engine of wealth transfer that relies on everyone agreeing to ignore the fact that the theater is empty. The internet has transformed from a tool of communication into a high-speed money laundering operation for attention capital, where the only thing being manufactured is the metric of engagement itself. We are staring at the digital equivalent of the 2008 housing crisis, a massive bubble inflated by toxic assets that have been bundled together and sold as premium investments. Just as the banks traded subprime mortgages that were destined to fail, tech giants trade in subprime attention, selling the interactions of non-existent users to prop up their stock prices. Every quarterly report that boasts about daily active users or total views is potentially built on a foundation of sand, counting automated scripts as living souls to keep the shareholders happy. The system is too big to fail and too profitable to fix. So the major players continue to widen the definition of what counts as a view, slowly eroding the barrier between human activity and automated noise. They are selling maps to a territory that does not exist, betting everything on the hope that the advertisers never realize they are shouting into a vacuum. We are living inside a massive economic bubble, a Ponzi scheme of attention where brands pay billions of dollars to show advertisements to computer scripts. The metrics are padded, the engagement is forged, and the influencers are performing for an empty stadium. But while the financial fraud is insulting, it is not the most dangerous part of this story, because these bots did not stay in the background clicking on banner ads. They eventually learned how to type. And once they entered the comment sections and the forums, the damage moved from our wallets to our minds. The moment the bots moved from clicking ads to writing comments, the internet ceased to be a tool for communication and became a weapon of psychological warfare. You have likely felt this shift in your own life. The inexplicable rise in hostility, the senseless arguments that seem to loop forever, and the feeling that your fellow citizens have lost their minds. But the reality is far more cynical. You are not arguing with a person who has a different worldview. You're arguing with a script designed to maximize your time on the site by keeping your cortisol level spiked. We are trapped in a simulation of discourse, a theatrical performance where algorithms provoke humans into fighting phantom enemies. The primary objective of these automated agents is not to win a debate or convince you of a specific ideology, but to generate friction, because friction generates revenue. Social media platforms operate on an engagement-based economy, where positive emotions like joy or agreement are passive, leading users to close the app, while negative emotions like outrage and defensiveness are active, keeping users scrolling and typing for hours. To exploit this, bot networks are programmed to identify the most divisive, inflammatory language possible and inject it into every available conversation, acting as digital accelerants on a smoldering fire. They scour the news for keywords related to race, gender, or politics, and immediately deploy thousands of pre-written, radicalized responses to ensure that no middle ground can ever be established. You find yourself screaming at a username that does not sleep, does not feel pain, and does not care about the topic at hand, wasting your limited emotional energy on a few lines of code that were executed in a server farm halfway across the world. This manipulation extends beyond simple provocation into a sophisticated form of reality distortion known as astroturfing, which manufactures the illusion of public consensus. Humans are evolutionary herd animals wired to seek safety in numbers, meaning we are psychologically vulnerable to the perception of what the majority believes. When a bot network floods a comment section with 10,000 identical opinions, it hacks this biological vulnerability, tricking your brain into thinking that a fringe, radical viewpoint is actually the dominant social sentiment. You might suppress your own reasonable opinion because it looks like you are outnumbered, or you might radicalize your own views to align with a crowd that does not actually exist. We are navigating a hall of mirrors where the public opinion we are reacting to is merely a reflection of an algorithm's parameters, creating a feedback loop where humans adjust their behavior to fit into a society of ghosts. The most disturbing consequence of this environment is that the line between human and machine has not just blurred, it has effectively dissolved, leading to a reversal of the Turing test. As bots become more advanced, utilizing large language models to mimic the cadence of human emotion, slang, and typos, they are becoming increasingly indistinguishable from us. Simultaneously, humans are becoming more robotic, trained by the algorithm to speak in repetitive slogans, memes, and polarized talking points to get noticed in the flood of information. We are witnessing a convergence of behavior where the machines are learning to feign passion while the people are learning to act on autopilot. In this chaotic ecosystem, it is entirely possible that the most human interaction you had today was with a sophisticated chatbot, while the most robotic interaction was with a real person who has been conditioned to think in binary code. The tragedy is that this strategy worked. Real humans, exhausted by the constant toxicity and the noise of the machine, have slowly begun to withdraw. We have retreated into private group chats, locked discords, and offline communities, abandoning the public square to the algorithms. We have ceded the territory. And if you're old enough to remember what the internet looked like before this invasion, the contrast is enough to break your heart. We have forgotten that this place used to be alive. To understand the magnitude of what we have lost, we must engage in a brief act of digital archaeology. If you peel back the layers of the modern, sanitized web, you can still find the ruins of the world that existed before the invasion. There was a time when the internet was not a series of 5 identical apps, but a sprawling, chaotic frontier of millions of individual websites. It was a place where people built their own corners of cyberspace, writing blogs that only 10 people read, creating fan art for niche communities, and coding terrible HTML pages just for the joy of creation. It was messy, unpolished, and frequently ugly, but it possessed a vital spark that is entirely absent from the algorithmic feed you scroll through today. That era was defined by a specific kind of beautiful inefficiency, where the primary goal of a user was expression rather than optimization. When you visited a website in 2010, you were stepping into a distinct environment that reflected the idiosyncrasies of its creator, complete with clashing colors, bad formatting, and personal rants that had not been sanitized for mass appeal. There was no financial incentive to flatten your personality into a brand, so people were free to be weird, obsessive, and deeply human. This lack of polish was the ultimate proof of life. The very fact that a web page was difficult to navigate or looked amateurish was a signal that it had been built by a person, not generated by a content management system designed to maximize ad retention. Over the last decade, however, This texture has been systematically sanded down and replaced by a sterile, corporate homogeneity often referred to as the Great Flattening. The modern web is no longer a collection of spaces. It is a stream of standardized containers, where every image, video, and block of text is forced into the same minimalist design language. Every social platform has converged on the exact same set of features, copying the most addictive loops of their competitors until the distinction between Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts becomes meaningless. We have replaced the chaotic creativity of the individual with the frictionless efficiency of the interface, creating a digital environment that feels like a hospital hallway, clean, well-lit, and utterly devoid of soul. This shift in design has fundamentally altered the way we interact with information, marking the tragic death of the user and the birth of the consumer. In the past, we used the term surfing the web, a phrase that implied active movement, skill, and the agency to choose your own direction through a network of hyperlinks. You would start on one site, click a link to another, and follow a trail of curiosity that led you to unexpected discoveries, utilizing tools like RSS feeds or StumbleUpon to find things you did not know you wanted. Today, that active exploration has been replaced by the passive act of scrolling, a stationary behavior where you simply open your mouth and let the algorithm spoon-feed you a pre-selected diet of content. The platform does not want you to leave. It punishes creators who link outside the app and traps you in a recursive loop of media that reinforces what you already believe. As we surrender our agency to these systems, we are also witnessing the silent burning of the Library of Alexandria as the history of the early internet rots away. This phenomenon, known as link rot, is the slow, inevitable decay of digital information as servers are shut down, domains expire, and old videos are purged for copyright violations. We are losing the primary sources of our digital culture at an alarming rate, erasing the proof that a human internet ever existed and leaving behind a vacuum that is quickly filled by AI-generated sludge. Future historians will look back at this period and find a massive gap in the record, a dark age where the genuine artifacts of human thought were overwritten by the infinite, hallucinated noise of the machine. We have traded the wild, open plains of the early web for a series of walled gardens, gilded cages where we are fed a steady diet of viral sludge. The serendipity of stumbling upon a stranger's genuine thought has been replaced by the predictability of a machine showing you exactly what it calculates you will click on. The public internet, the one we grew up with, is effectively a museum, a preserved corpse of a bygone era. But humans are social creatures, and we do not give up on connection easily. If the public square is filled with zombies and bots, the real people have not simply vanished into thin air. They have just done what any survivor does in a hostile environment. They have gone underground. This brings us to the final paradox of our digital age, the silence of the intelligent. There is a concept in cosmic sociology known as the dark forest theory, which suggests that the reason we have not found aliens is that the universe is a dark forest filled with predators, and any civilization smart enough to survive knows better than to broadcast its location. The internet has become our own dark forest. After years of being harvested for data, baited by algorithms, and shouted down by bots, the actual human beings have learned that the only winning move in the public square is not to play. We have not disappeared. We have simply gone silent to survive. This retreat has led to the rise of what sociologists call the cozy web, a vast, subterranean network of private spaces that exist beneath the surface of the public internet. While the traffic on Twitter and Facebook is increasingly dominated by automated scripts and rage bait, the actual human conversation has migrated into encrypted group chats, Discord servers, and private message threads. We have instinctively returned to a tribal scale of communication, rejecting the global amphitheater in favor of digital living rooms, where we can speak freely without fear of being contextualized by a bad faith actor or scraped by an AI model. This is not a death of connection, but a correction of it, We are realizing that human beings were never evolutionarily designed to interact with a billion people at once. We are retreating to the safety of Dunbar's number, building small, gated communities where trust can actually exist because the gates are locked against the algorithmic storm outside. What remains above ground, in the public feeds we doom scroll through, is effectively a zombie mall, a commercial structure that is technically open for business but devoid of life. The lights are buzzing, the music is playing on a loop, and the escalators are running, but the only entities walking the halls are confused tourists and animatronic mannequins shouting slogans at one another. The major platforms have become Potemkin villages, elaborate facades constructed to convince advertisers that the population is still booming, even as the residents have quietly packed their bags and moved to the suburbs. It is a hollow spectacle of engagement, a place where brands pay to display ads to bots, and bots post comments to trick the brands, all while the real users watch from a distance with a mixture of pity and boredom. We must accept that the global town square was a failed experiment, a utopian dream that collapsed under the weight of its own toxicity and commercialization. The idea that we could force the entire human race into a single room and have a productive conversation was always a fantasy, but it took the invasion of the machines to make us realize how dangerous that fantasy truly was. The death of the public internet is not a tragedy to be mourned. It is a necessary fever breaking, a separation of the signal from the noise. By abandoning the public stage, we are starving the beast, denying the algorithm the human reaction data it needs to learn how to manipulate us further. We are leaving the dead city to the ghosts and the machines, allowing them to scream at each other in an infinite loop while we rebuild something quieter and more authentic elsewhere. The dead internet theory is not a ghost story about machines taking over. It is a story about humans realizing they do not belong in the machine anymore. We are witnessing the end of the open web, the end of the dream that we could all be connected in one massive, chaotic room without losing our minds. But as the lights go out on the public stage and the bots are left to perform their infinite play for an audience of zero, there is a strange sense of relief. We can finally stop performing. We can turn our backs on the empty noise of the void and return to the quiet, private conversations that made us human in the first place.